Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we're taking this night watchman on a journey he wasn't really expecting, as he looks for answers and secrets in the dungeons below. As a watchman, he's tasked with keeping the streets clean, free of all crime and violence. However, lately, that violence has shifted. What was once before riddled with rogues and thievery has now become polluted with magic and sorcery. And sorcery of a different nature, mostly a dark nature that this watchman is not too fond of. Keeping the streets free and clear of all trouble has become a task that they're not ready for. High-value weapons and items have been pouring into the city, creating chaos and fear amongst those living in the inner cities. Cities themselves are quite often full of rumors. However, just recently, a watchman reported seeing beasts being summoned out of thin air. And if this is true, the watchmen truly are not ready for what's coming, as dark magic will begin pouring into the streets as well. So, this watchman's here in Goblin Caves, searching for the source of all these high valuable items, and seeing if the rumors are true, that summoning has now entered the world of men. This journey will not be an easy one, as normally this watchman's quite familiar with his territory, knowing the ins and outs of his city and the area he patrols. Entering into this goblin map has been a new experience, something that few people dare to do, and even fewer know all that well. Dealing with these few mobs, I'm starting to get the hang of things again. This fighter class, seriously, hasn't changed all that much. And, really, the Goblin Caves themselves, yes, this is a new module, but seriously, the only thing that's changed is the fact that there's fewer people here. We find a pretty nice dagger already, which makes me wonder if the loot has been slightly increased in these dungeons. Overall, loot has definitely been tuned. The thing that surprised me the most is the fact there are fewer people in Goblin Caves, meaning escaping is almost guaranteed, as you don't have to fight as long as you can get by the PvE. There's a portal that spawns like super early, and 6 or 7 portals, sometimes even 2 escapes I think on this map, outside of the portals. So, it's like a weird... It's kind of odd for me right now in Goblin Caves. One thing I can say for sure is that it certainly feels a lot different, and we'll see going forward if these changes are for the better or worse. Perhaps Goblin Caves is more new player friendly. Already in this game we have 2 people that died to PvE or traps. That has been consistent. This is the early level queues. But even in the upper level queues, the space and time you have now is really, really different. So we're just going to smash through this one, breaking a bunch of barrels, looting a bunch of chests, killing the odd mob, giving us the odd little piece of loot. This guy gave us 3 bolts, which is kind of a strange drop, but we continue. This is pretty much a free loot run. We have a portal spawn super early. I haven't heard a single footstep, another player, anywhere's in the vicinity. So we're just going to clear mobs, upgrade some of our gear, and Regal Gambeson is actually quite nice now. A lot of the light armors have become incredibly good, either giving you strength, solid armor, decent magic resist. The options you have is quite wild. Even a green giving you +2 strength, +2 agility. The changes are still something I'm taking in and don't fully understand just how powerful they are yet. Quickly checking what else was out there. You find a wizard and a Slayer fighter dueling it out, and this Slayer fighter's got some nice stuff. I mean, that is a pretty solid setup for a 1 to 15 queue. When I first saw this, it kind of blew my mind. I was looking at this thinking, my god, like this is some pretty good stuff early on. And then as I learned more about the shop and vendors and all the stuff going on there, this isn't too difficult to get now. If you have a couple successful runs, you can piece together some pretty good loot. Things are a bit more expensive, but the value you get from a green or blue is a little bit reduced on the weapons, but improved on the armors. So it's an interesting balance right now where things are a little bit slower, killing stuff takes a little bit longer. It took quite a bit to get used to it, having spent a little bit of time away from this game. But this watchman, he makes it out alive, and now has a bit more confidence to keep searching the dungeon deeper and deeper. And of course, like any good watchman, he's going to take that lantern and wield it as a primary weapon, Even though the buckler came in handy dealing with a few ranged mobs last dungeon run, this guy's got some interesting decisions to make. And with the merchants full of high value loot and gear, there's a lot of options. Almost too many options. And this Watchman's going with what he knows, taking that arming sword to combo it with the lantern. The lantern is the Watchman's go-to light source in the dark, and after being part of the Watchman for a few years, it feels light in the hand. So keeping his movement speed and mobility as a high priority, he's going to run arming sword and lantern to be as quick as possible in the darkness. We're going to switch over from projectile resistance to Slayer, making the most of that weapon damage we get from wielding two weapons in our main hands. Other than that, we grab some pots, some bandages, and this guy is ready for another foray into the dungeon. But just before departing, we notice we could afford a crossbow if we make some sales. So we sell our lantern, we sell our buckler, we sold the two nice offhand weapons, which are increasingly hard to find, and buy a 14 gold, exactly 14 gold is all we had, crossbow. So those 3 bolts we found earlier will be quite crucial, as it will be all we really have. Movement speed from lantern plus lightfoot boots puts us at like just shy of 320 while popping sprint, which is not horrible. And then the damage we get on Slayer, hitting almost 60 with the arming sword. Once we activate Adrenaline Rush, this Watchman will be swinging this weapon exceptionally fast. Some pretty solid damage numbers considering the weapon damage as a whole has been tuned down. Starting this one off, get a nice little potion, get some arrows, we keep them just in case we find a different bow. And we get tagged. I don't know how we got tagged by that. It was like at the maximum distance for that thing's reach. It must have clipped my hands as he swung horizontally. That potion's going to come in handy, because we're going to need it right away. As usually, there's a player that spawns on the bridges above you in certain times, I guess. Hasn't always happened to me, but I have been on the upper end of this spawn and sprinted over here to fight a guy early on. Doesn't always happen, but you do have to be aware of that happening. It is quite difficult getting used to all the spawns and where players are with changes, and quite truthfully, I barely ever touched High Roller, so this map is like a whole new world to me. It is not a map I frequented very often, but I am excited to be able to make the most of it as I explore Goblin Caves freely. Only thing I would say that's a little bit tricky is the crafting. Crafting makes you want to be able to pick if you want to go fight spiders, or spider silk, or if you want to kill mummies, etc., etc. So having the two different options, and the fact that certain mobs are more prevalent, certainly spiders are way more prevalent on this one, can make it a little frustrating if you're trying to do any crafting or mining, as you don't really know which map you're going to be dealing with on the next run. It's not horrible. I just wish the mobs were, I guess, a little more consistent across the maps. Maybe they should throw some spiders into the other Goblin Caves map, just so you had the option of hitting that one as well. It's just my 2 cents. It's still very early days. I think the crafting looks incredibly interesting, and I know a lot of people will be hunting wolves, trying to get those wolf pelts so they can get coin bags and whatnot. The only issue is I think you need a troll skin, something like that. Troll isn't something I've ever really enjoyed fighting, especially not in the fighter class. I feel like it's so tedious. So tedious and so risky. Fighter can do it, sure, but most people are just running rogue or warlock, and I mean, warlock kills that thing in like a minute or less. So it feels a little strange trying to kite around that troll as a fighter class, which takes a long time, and it's fairly risky. But it's something I may have to learn going forward if I do want to farm materials, as crafting is now upon us, and some of the items look pretty exceptional and interesting. In this one, once again, it's a fairly quiet start. Our lantern is held high, but no players are really being spotted yet, as we clear some of the mobs in this large room. This weapon damage has been quite a nice addition, clearing bats and goblins in 1 or 2 less hits is always a nice feeling. And the armor we added on, Gambeson and whatnot, does not feel like it's slowing us down at all, considering normally that would feel like kind of a sluggish way to play, especially wielding 2 weapons, but the fact that you're able to get additional movement speed rather than having -10 movement speed on even the lightest weapon is quite an improvement, and it's very interesting to see how this works. We found another early portal, as is quite common now. I feel like these are popping up more and more, giving players that early chance to get out who are still struggling to learn this game. This Watchman is not that interested. He wants to delve deeper and see what exactly is causing all these rumors. Just in case, he's going to leave the way open for himself, as he knows it's quite rare to be exploring these dungeons by yourself. Scavengers, thieves, looters, killers, murderers, everyone has been coming here recently to find the treasure hidden behind the goblin hordes. This Watchman, not necessarily interested in treasure, but is, however, interested in stopping it from getting in the hands of those who should not have it. The criminals of this world are becoming way too wealthy, and it's something he needs to do everything he can to stop. The grip of this arming sword in his hands is feeling better and better. He's getting increasingly confident in his ability to survive these dungeons alone. And so far, he's yet to meet any real troublemakers in this darkness, but it's bound to happen sooner rather than later. And just there he caught the slight sounds, and now the clear sounds, of footsteps. Those footsteps don't sound like a goblin, so he readies his crossbow, hoping whatever it is rounds that corner, and will take a bolt to the face. He does have a way out of here, giving himself an opportunity to safely test the waters of this little engagement, without feeling like he's risking too much. Just like that, there's nothing. Don't hear any more footsteps on our left, so we continue looting. Something that I guess the Goblin Caves is pretty much there for now. It's essentially a place to go loot, and PvP is kind of secondary. We did hear the odd arrow coming from this direction and the death sound of a goblin. I'm gonna quickly check out and see if there's anything moving. Sure enough, we hear someone firing a bow close by. Wasting no time, we hit him with a crossbow bolt, as no one in this dungeon is to be trusted. Feeling the effects of our arrow, he jumps away, and looks like we're going to be chasing down a ranger. Do have to be careful of any traps, as he did jump through this door, which has me slightly confused. Burning quick shot. Now's the time to push. Using our movement speed and adrenaline rush, the Slayer weapon damage, comboed into a couple headshots, makes quick work of this guy. This guy didn't have anything too extraordinary that we're hoping to get off the streets. But rangers can't be trusted, no one can be trusted, as anyone entering this dungeon is here under criminal pretenses. Having a pretty decent inventory, we're gonna return to our portal and hopefully escape. However, that's not quite possible, as a warlock wielding dark magic is now chasing us through the darkness. We try to slow him down with a flaming bottle, but that doesn't seem to do enough, as we miss 2 throwing axes. And now we are in quite a fuss, as I was expecting a door to be in this location, but this is not normal Goblin Caves. Luckily enough, he actually phantomizes away, giving us enough time to pot up, even though we wasted adrenaline rush. That smash from that longsword is likely going to be enough to do us in. We have an invisibility potion, which was hugely helpful, making sure the mob switched aggro onto him, as he returns to see where we went. This isn't really a fight I want right now, and if he does get a little closer, I may spring out of the shadows once Adrenaline Rush is off cooldown. Adrenaline Rush is basically all our damage. Sure, our weapon damage is okay, but the fact that we can greatly increase that using Adrenaline Rush is kind of what this build is set up for. Second Wind would have been an awesome option as well, which gives you a bit of time to space, fight, and deal more sustained damage. We are going for burst damage, which is the way we like to do things here. Oddly enough, I don't see that warlock or hear anything. There's been no deaths. So my only guess is that maybe he left that portal open that we had and took it. We're in a little bit of a panic here. Take 2 arrows just being a little bit lazy and careless. And this leaves us in a pretty bad spot considering we just burned through a whole bunch of meds. Don't have a whole lot of them left. And I'm still not entirely sure if that warlock is dead or alive. And if you look in the top right hand corner to see what is going on in this game, it's quite often, at least from what I've noticed, you don't see a whole load of PvP anymore. There was one dungeon run where I literally had 2 kills, and it was the only kills on the leaderboard, other than escape portals. The whole raid, I was the last person alive. Nothing. Like, there was nothing that really went on. It's kind of crazy to me. I get it. People are learning the game. But I think going forward, I would like to see that number go back up a little bit. Because right now, I feel like you shouldn't have a guaranteed exit. There shouldn't be equal or more exits than there are players. This feels wrong. It feels like there's nothing really to fight for. And really, you could go in here and be completely friendly to every person you walked into, and you'd never have to worry about missing out on a portal. So that I'm not too like thrilled with. I'm missing my old goblin caves a little bit. Even though this Watchman's making it with lots of good gear to get himself set up for some of the deeper dungeons, we are a little bit concerned with how much fun we're going to be having in goblin caves going forward. So this means maybe we'll have to try new maps and enter into different dungeons. Once again, that was successful. We did manage to stop a criminal ranger from escaping with some loot. However, not a lot of loot, just some decent stuff. We're going to buy some bolts, and really, this Slayer setup is not in a terrible spot already. There's no point really risking it for a blue arming sword, if we're even that lucky, from Goblin Merchant, as quite frankly, the weapon damage increase is so small now. The only thing you really want to be looking for is decent weapon stats in terms of what they roll, maybe be strength, additional weapon damage, etc., etc. But quite frankly, we're not in a terrible setup for a Slayer build already. I do find it like sometimes difficult to find just base level weapons. So let's say I want to run a spear, or this Watchman want to switch it up and go with something a little more unique. It is difficult to find gray or white gear or weapons. You find a lot of purples and blues and greens, which you can't always afford, or it's not always really valuable to run green weapons just testing stuff out. It can cost you a fair bit of money when you're getting started. However, those loose trousers looking real nice. 2 agility, 3 health. It's not a bad upgrade, and it's increasingly blowing my mind how good some of these leather items are. Padded tunic, regal gambeson have both been changed, adding magic resistance to the gambeson, and tunic getting, I think it is strength. Quite a huge change. So we're actually going to buy those pants, sell these ones, purchase some meds, and then hopefully have enough to survive another dungeon raid. Unfortunately, we are just shy of having enough for another bandage. Unless we make use of the silver coins, which we will. Meaning, we can afford 1 more bandage. Gotta use every penny in these sort of things. And there we go. Instead of a bandage, we're actually gonna go potion. Heck with it, 3 potions instead. Using up all our gold. We're gonna go Goblin Caves 1 more time. Just to see if we can get... And here's what I was hoping for. The other version of our old tried and true Goblin Caves. Perhaps there'll be more PvP in this one, or at least I'll know the map well enough to be able to hunt down any players. Just surviving is not exactly what this Watchman set out to do. He's going to have to get his hands dirty to understand what people are bringing back to the world and to the cities of men. So, fighting other players, dealing damage with this harming sword, and shining this lantern in the face of those who oppose him. What we're here to do. It's become increasingly difficult to find solid PvP engagements in the new setup. So we're just going to loot everything we can again and see what happens. We have a crossbow that does provide, even with only a few bolts, does provide you a really nice setup option. Found another leather cap, which is kind of interesting. I am surprised there are not more leather options for headwear for the fighter class. It's crazy to me. Find leather cap's fine. But when you compare it to some of the other options like Shadow Mask with all attributes, like it's Shadow Mask, Shadow Hood, some of the options that Rogue gets, makes me wish there was like a chainmail, some sort of different thing. Doesn't have to be amazing or groundbreaking. Just another option. The fact that we have to run around with these leather caps if we're running Slayer should come a little bit stale for me. I thought I heard a player breaking boards close by, so I was kind of curious checking out that new loud water. And sure enough, as we go back, we see that that wall is actually broken, meaning there's definitely a player down below. The giant centipede took out a guy, as it now has a new attack animation, which likely did that guy in, as he was probably surprised by it and hadn't seen it yet, and it can do a lot of damage. Getting rid of this death beetle basically gives us a little bit of space. That thing will always fly at you at the wrong moment when you're fighting somebody, when you're up in these upper levels. Doesn't seem like this guy's aware of our torch. And it's a new warlock. Just like any warlock, we are going to try to put this guy down early. Fortunately, this Watchman's not well practiced in the crossbow, and that bolt whips right under his chin. So we go for an easy shot to the hip, which did this warlock in. That is one less warlock to terrorize the streets of the inner cities. Moving along, we kind of get caught by zone here a little bit. Not ideal. I was hoping to see more players, as I'm always aware of all the spawns. We do hear a guy above us. And we get a full room with Skelly Champ. And now, I have tried fighting Skelly Champ, albeit with some rather poor weapons, let's just say. And I feel like his attacks come out a little faster. I'm not sure. Thought I read that his attack animations had changed. And truthfully, I am not confident enough with this setup to fight Skelly Champion at this moment. Every time I've fought him so far in this new patch, I have been hurt quite badly. So we're going to book it out of here, get some distance, as I refuse to die and end this permadeath to a slip up against some rather troubling PvE. That is the best thing to do, though, if you're going in Goblin Caves, is learn how to fight stuff like that. And this looks like where that guy died to Centipede. I want to take a quick peek. Centipede's definitely there, and he aggroed onto us. So we're going to back him onto these spike traps and hope we can clear this before zone takes our health slowly away. Luckily enough, he actually just messes off, and truthfully, not a bad thing. That way I can loot some of these rooms and not get pushed into zone, having lost most of my HP to the new Centipede attack. If you haven't seen it yet, it is an interesting one, as it kind of just covers the floor with poison. And I've yet to really learn how to properly dodge or get away from it, or even why it does it. Sometimes it will do it multiple times, leaving you absolutely no room to walk. It's a tricky one. I'm glad they added some new animations to it, or some sort of new attack patterns, considering it's becoming a little bit stale, swinging in circles. Whipping out our crossbow, we see a rogue up top. Something that's terrorized this Watchman for years and years. He wants to put this guy away quickly. Unfortunately, there's still quite a few mobs we gotta deal with before we can make it towards this road. There is a portal down below. And then just like that, we don't really see any signs of that rogue, which could just mean he's invisible. We're not hearing any footsteps. I'm expecting a knife in the back at any moment. Yet, nothing. These death skulls have some pretty incredible loot lately, as I've found pendants and stuff on them in goblin caves, which wasn't something you ever did before. And it appears that rogue has decided to mess off. Once again, clearing PvE, waiting for final portal. We can once again just safely clear mobs, loot, do whatever we want. Feels so strange. Usually you're under a lot more pressure, and people are pushing you from multiple directions, or at least you hear or see signs of other players way more often. So this is a whole new experience for me, and means we'll likely have to jump into runes next game for sure. We see something standing in that hallway, and it really threw me off. I couldn't tell if it was a player or a barrel or something. I just wasn't really sure what was going on there, and sure enough it was a player. Would have been incredibly difficult to lob a crossbow bolt into that narrow hallway, regardless. But we see signs of life. Signs of criminal life. We try to cut him off from the other direction, but once again, see nothing. Portal's still untouched. We don't see any real movement. We're gonna make our way to the right. Maybe a player will be coming from that direction as the portal starts to kind of close in. There's got to be someone else around. And as we wait and watch over this portal, we do see signs. We see signs of another combatant off in the distance. See if we can land a crazy crossbow shot. Seems to hit the wooden post just in front of him. This guy heard us, and he's doing the whole friendly dance. However, the first rule of being a watchman is never trust anyone unless they too are a watchman. So, this guy doesn't realize it. There's no making friends here. A watchman never lets his guard down, and never lets anyone persuade him into being friendly. Firing a warning shot that was meant to be a headshot, we reload our crossbow, as this guy continues to try to convince us of his good nature. However, a crossbow bolt fixes that, and even if he were to disregard the training the watchman receives, skeletons should not be wearing clothing. So, that was enough alone to convince me this guy was worth killing. Now, making our way back to our portal, that is likely all the action we're going to find. We move on, we jump down, got a few mobs to deal with, and then we can escape successfully. We're just going to pop this portal open as fast as possible and get on our way. Seeing how we aggroed one archer and then another is not something I'm interested in fighting. Luckily, they delayed just long enough to give me time to escape. Once again, 3 for 3 in Goblin Caves, yet we haven't really faced a true combatant in quite a long time. And a pile of good loot. And this watchman's beginning to realize why so much gear, so many high-value items are making its way into the city. As escaping from the caves has become incredibly successful and rewarding. Luckily, we've stopped a few people from making it back, but likely not nearly enough to stem the tide of criminal activity. So, we need to sell some stuff, buy some potions, and then look for upgrades. And really, like I said earlier, this is a difficult thing to upgrade, considering that arming sword's 200 gold. It's not that much better than my green one. And really, Slayer is pushing this green weapon into the upper echelons of like a unique, I think, based on some of the new stat rolls. So, there's not a lot we can do here. Buy some crossbow bolts, as we are going to be going into runes, which will give us a bit more of a challenge. There's a lot more players, a lot more thieves. And then we could, I mean, we can't even really roll on Lightfoots because we have greens that have a nice stat line. And the last thing we could maybe do is buy some throwing axes if all else fails. But first, I just want to quickly look at some of the armor options. This Paddock Tunic has me incredibly interested. Decent armor rating now, and strength. The fact that you can get like +2 strength on different rarities, pretty incredible. But the Regal Gambeson gives you that 35 magic resistance. And we're going to do a quick little peek to see what that does to our overall. So that alone gives us, what, 4? Around 4 magic resistance, so it's not terrible. Considering you can get the Barbuda Helm now that has higher magic resistance, you can also get better will on some items like pants. I'd be really intrigued to see how high magic resist rating you could get on a lightly geared fighter running Slayer. I feel like it's the only thing in the fighter class that's really changed at all, as full plate fighter feels kind of dead. That's just me. I've always preferred this playstyle anyway, but I don't see any real noticeable or great changes. And with all the magic damage around and warlocks and wizards, fighter right now is in a really challenging spot. And this Watchman is in a challenging spot as well. Skirting around the edges of this map, holding his torch high. This is a new world to him altogether. Fighting undead monsters and flying creatures alike. He's gonna have to try to find a way to survive in here and return back to the world of the living. This torch is great at revealing dark locations, but it's also great at telling other adventurers where he's hiding, what he's doing. The night has become his home. However, increasingly, the night has become more dangerous each passing day. He's very cautious of what or who else hides in the darkness. The goblin dungeons were successful for him, and he feels that the loot coming from them alone is enough to riddle the streets with criminals and valuable items. These abandoned ruins have been long forgotten. However, more and more stories are saying that things are alive here more than ever, and more adventurers are coming here risking their lives to obtain whatever secret this place hides. So this Watchman's going to make his way into ruins with a solo survivor to see he as well can uncover what lay hidden here. He's yet to experience or witness any of this new magic or new sorcery, and perhaps this will be the place he gets to first experience it. Hopefully it doesn't cost him his life. Looting around the edge of this one, it's really not a bad spawn. If you can avoid the wisp, I find wisps super loud and annoying. Obviously incredibly bright when you kill them if you're looking at them. And they just draw attention and take time. We're going to move to the center, avoiding that. There's a protection shrine close by, which is always very helpful. And that's going to be our priority as we try to survive the duos, or squads you could say, in this dungeon. Ruins has gradually become a really fun map, especially on the early queue system. Even though it's a pile of rangers and barbarians right now, you can still be somewhat successful here. And at the very minimum, you're always going to get into some decent PvP engagements. Sure, most times they're going to be quick, and you're going to die to a barbarian being buffed by a cleric, etc, etc. But you're going to get into some fights. There's always a lot of players around, and as you're seeing across this bridge, we get a team of 2, looks like a warlock and barbarian. We don't really want to mess with unless we can land a few crossbow bolts on them. Luckily, they kind of just ignore us, and I did hear something on the other side of that wall or underneath us. I'm not quite sure where that noise came from, but I feel like someone is close by. And those guys on the far side somewhat disappeared, so I'm going to do a quick look to see if they'd have ventured around to the sides. Going back the way we came. Take a quick little look to see if they're moving around this side of the map, trying to push me. But really nothing. And it is something to behold. This is one of the most picturesque maps. I don't really have time to enjoy that, as a fighter is pushing me, blocking my bolts with his shield. We need to draw one more time quickly, and then get our weapons out, popping sprint and adrenaline rush. 3 clean swings, a headshot. That guy is done. This time a red skeleton removed from the world. Do give him props, as he did not take a step backwards, forward and forward into my blade. It does, however, make sense as a brainless monster is going to rush headlong into any challenge it can face. Luckily, we were skilled enough to deal with it and chop that guy down before he could do any real damage to us. We have a lot of meds here. We got this little area cleared out of mobs. And now we can kind of recover. And already we're seeing way more action in ruins. The only thing that has me a little bit worried is I don't see a lot of kills on the kill feed. So I'm expecting there to be a lot of teams still alive. This guy had a nice longsword, but I guess he was trying to block my bolts, so he kept his sword and shield out. I think that ultimately cost him a lot of damage. This armor sword didn't hurt quite enough. And he could have maybe got lucky and riposte parried my arming sword. Arming sword actually has a fairly easy, I'm not going to say easy because I don't do it all that often, but even if you miss the parry or riposte, you often catch it, take a bit of damage, but the double swing and bonus damage you get from it when you parry is quite nice. So, sometimes it's worth it just to eat a swing even if you're not good with a longsword, giving yourself a pile of damage in a short time. We hear more action close by as this skeleton has its eyes on another criminal. We hear skeletons dying, and a skeleton crossbowman drops that player. Thinking that was all there was, we're gonna move in to investigate, and we hear more. We're gonna open this up. I feel like this guy's in a tough spot. It sounds like he's using a staff. And yes, it is a wizard. A wizard who has likely left the teachings of the guild behind. They're not meant to seek power or money, and must only seek knowledge. We're going to teach this wizard a little bit about an arming sword as we jump over his fireball and then chase him down with the benefit of our lantern's movement speed. Once again, movement speed, it's so nice. It's exceptional. In the past, I would have likely been just a little step behind that guy, missing those armor sword swings. But now we can catch people quite a lot easier. Even wearing, normally I would never wear this chest plate as it would slow me down too much. So, that is a very nice feeling to have a lot more options. Once again, we need to bandage up. Grab that guy's potions. Unfortunately, I did forget about the guy who got smashed by the crossbow. We're gonna get some potions up, grab this protection shrine once again, and make our way into the inner circle. Got a pretty nice inventory. We've run into some decent PvP. And now the big room beyond is usually the one where there's a lot of action. Where the worm spawn used to be and when rusty keys were extremely popular to farm, this room was always exciting. We're going to venture in here again cautiously with our torch out and see what we can find. I hear noises that are not familiar to me, and I realize there's a guy underneath, and he's fighting a golem. We take a crossbow bolt at him, but he seems to be a fairly new fighter. He asked for my help, and I obliged, as killing this golem and learning of its loot could be more valuable than destroying this criminal. This will be the first time I've ever fought this thing. And it does have some pretty slow attacks, but we get caught in kind of a long swing animation there as he kind of clobbers you with his right arm. So I think the whole idea is, if you had two people here, as we do, you could just easily lure him around in circles and dodge out of most of those attacks. So he's now re-aggro back onto our buddy. And really, he moves so slow, and I think for the most part you can get away from those giant slams. And we take this guy out. And really, there wasn't wasn't much of value. I think most of the value is going to be in these chests below, which I am not that interested in. I don't want to be stuck down here as a team rolls up. We need to get moving. And I will make one exception. I'm going to leave this guy be, as he did help us further understand what type of loot we're discovering in this dungeon. We're going to go our separate ways. He can have whatever he likes down here. We're going to try to make it out of the ruins safely and alive to report back with this information. Really not a lot of value, unless you're looting all the chests down here. Finding two, what was it, one green and a white. Maybe we're just unlucky. I feel like there's much better things to uncover in this map. I heard the guy over here, I thought he went up the other side, so this kind of confused me how he switched sides and went up this one. I don't really know what he was doing with the lever, but obviously he was excited to get out of here with whatever he had found. So he's now gone. So seeing how zone is closing quite closely, see a couple kills to mobs or deaths to mobs. I don't see a whole lot of PvP action either, which kind of surprises me. Then we get the big bird killing somebody. I'm not really sure if I want to stick around. Don't see anything that incredible happening, so away we go. With a whole bunch of loot, a whole bunch of knowledge, and yeah, that pretty much settles this raid. We survived ruins as a solo, the first time in quite a while. Once again, pretty successful run. And then we see the chaos that was ensuing just beyond. And of course, they were literally entering that room just as we were leaving. It would have been an amazing opportunity to sling some crossbow bolts, as these guys are panicking, trying to get away from Big Bird. That was 1 HP. This guy's very low. And that would have been an interesting engagement if I had decided to arrive. Unfortunately, that is for another day. And that chicken just destroyed that barbarian. And these two guys make it out safely. Did kind of spectate to see what happened there. They didn't really fight it, they just kind of whirled around in circles until both of them could escape. So once again, a decent haul of loot. And the amount of gold we're making. The amount of gold we're making on this permadeath run is pretty wild. I mean, I feel like I'm not doing anything that special. We're just going in, looting, and surviving as we search for more information. But quite frankly, this is kind of wild. I've had a lot of money to spend each time, and I'm kind of just spending it on whatever and wasting it on expensive potions. But if we had saved some of this, we'd be into purple gear or some really awesome leather gear, which I think is probably the better way to spend your money if you're on a fighter class using Slayer. Purple arming sword is not going to be that huge of an upgrade unless it has some like incredible stats. So focus on the leather gear, leather armor, pants, doublets, whatever it is. You can get some really interesting stat rolls, and like we see right there, all attributes plus resourcefulness. We're going to keep the +2 agility. We're actually going to have +3 agility, and then we're going to get 2 HP back from the strength anyway. So that would be a very, very nice little upgrade. It's not super cheap, but it's something we can spend our money on as we have a decent setup already. We didn't waste a whole lot of potions. We had a pile of them, and we're going to purchase these pants. And that will pretty much round out what we have to offer in this build. We do quickly sell a potion just so we can buy a few more crossbow bolts, as those are going to be pretty beneficial. However, one thing we forgot to equip our perk, as we didn't quite realize we were level 5. It's been a long time since I made it to level 5 on a permadeath run, so I just kept jumping into raids and seeing where it took me, and unfortunately we did not get to grab dual wield. It's going to cost us some attack speed, but we'll see if we can make it out of here and equip it next time. Now this, thank you to one of you guys, one of you viewers said, make sure you jump down here, as there's some amazing loot. So I decided to start jumping down here, and sure enough, this is where you can find a Royal Coffin. I did not know, I had no prior knowledge of this, and I was kind of just messing around. But Royal Coffins are super good loot. You'll see here shortly what we find. But from what I understand, you almost always get a purple. Like, I think you almost always get a purple, at least I have so far. And this time, we get a blue helmet. Not real great for us. 2 pendants, which is kind of wild. We get our purple item, which is that jewelry. And that is not a terrible Warlock pendant. Magical healing and true magical damage. Pretty nice. Resourcefulness, mediocre. But still, you can find some crazy stuff in these. Like really, really strong stuff. And literally just start a raid, get a good spawn, drop down. Here you have it. So, of all the things that we've found so far with our Night Watchmen, this is by far the strongest source of loot I've found in the game. Even seeing how most other things are really successful, you also get another chest under here which you need a key for. So Ruins has some pretty decent loot options, and I'm only beginning to explore some of the depths of it. Goblin Caves, I haven't got to even fully explore the new module, or where all the good loot spawns in it. But this seems like a pretty nice little spot if you're looking for naked run, maybe get a lucky spawn, maybe just sprint over here. There could be other Royal Coffin spawns that I'm not aware of. I'm not super up to speed with all the maps, every little bit of information. I don't really get too caught up in that stuff, as I enjoy just going in and fighting players. We're going to clear this little tower. It brings us back to the upper side where we get a nice little 2-handed skeleton. We'll see if we can smash this guy through the cage. Sure enough, the hitboxes on this armored sword and in Dark and Darker are usually quite nice. The fact that I can kind of weave my weapon in between there, it's quite fun. But yeah, whoever mentioned in the last patch that this is a good spot to loot, it's gotten a lot better. Royal Coffin changes things quite a great deal, and there's still a pile of coffins up top that I can loot. I haven't even really got started into the map yet. This is just, yeah, sure enough we find a blue mace. That leaves me with an interesting dilemma. That mace would be hitting quite a bit harder than my arming sword. Just not a huge fan of the attack animations. Love the movement speed on the arming sword. And really, quite frankly, how often are you finding armor anymore? I feel like everyone is going fairly light. Maybe the most armored thing you're going to be fighting will be a cleric. As fighters, I don't see a lot of fighters. Seriously. Warlock with the new changes and some of the new spells, they have become increasingly popular. And sure enough, we hear some plate boots just to eat our words a little bit. And we smash him in the chest with an arrow as he keeps on running. Trying to catch him on the other side of this door. Let's see if we can land a free kill on this cleric. But we're not gonna run into a horde of mobs just to chase down a level 1 cleric. Not really the most wise decision, especially when a team of 2 could be waiting around the next door. The skeleton aggroed onto us, so we're going to deal with him at the next door. We make sure there's no one sneaking up behind us. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Ruins is a beautiful map. And with the changes to Rogue, it makes it a little bit more, I guess a little bit less, of a horror game experience with things jumping out of the bushes, stabbing you with weak point ambush. I feel like there's more rangers, and that's going to be maybe a problem they deal with going forward. Overall, the general look and feel of Ruins is quite exceptional. Always thought it was a beautiful map. Just gameplay-wise, it has certain issues. Howling Crypts will always be my favorite map, just for the way that map flows, and the PvE, and the fact that it was the only thing you could play when I first started playing this game. However, there's a lot they can do with the Ruins map. I would love to see a Ruins hardcore sort of experience where you go to Ruins, you go to Howling Crypts, and then to Hell, and it's like a no-trade, hardcore queue, where you go through each of these maps, or you can open it back up to trios, and have everyone just play here as if it's its own little separate world, starting in Ruins, and try out that whole 3-dungeon experience again. I understand that makes games a little bit longer, but I think for people that want a tradeless or trade-free experience, it could be interesting. Now we'll see what these changes have done to trade, but I think ultimately trade is probably pretty dead right now, considering so many good items already in players' rotations. I just think it would be cool to have its own kind of separate hardcore experience. Maybe once the player base gets long enough. Even like found and raid only sort of deal, so you can't even sell or buy stuff from merchants. Maybe that's a little extreme, but you know what I mean. At least then when you jumped into that raid, you knew anything that you were facing was something that that person had spent time and effort into finding and working for. I feel like right now, if I had time, I could farm goblin caves for like 10 hours, 8 hours, have a pile of gold so large I could buy almost anything I wanted, finding pretty solid items from the merchants, but ultimately finding the really, really good items from the trade. Overall, I could see some people that really play this game day in, day out, being a little concerned with how good loot is available so easily. Now, before we can deal with that, we have a little situation happening over here. And this looks like multiple teams, like 2 groups fighting each other. This is the sort of situation I love to be a part of. Looked like a magic fireball or hellfire smashed through this door, which means we have a warlock of dark magic. We tag him with an arrow, and we're expecting just to fight this guy as we round the corner. We run into his cleric friend. Missing our blows on him, we have to turn on the warlock, as he's the only guy we're going to be able to kill. And then, of course, cleric presses the kill button, and we die. And this Watchman's run is over. He was so hungry to kill that warlock wielding dark magic. We didn't really expect to see a cleric hidden behind the door. I thought I saw some people die in the kill feed, so I was hoping it was 2 weak players or one team had lost a player and there's still another guy fighting for his life kind of thing. Unfortunately, we run right into the corner into a 2v1. That was a tough one. If I had to get enough distance away from the cleric, if I had to focus on the warlock, there's really no way. There's no way I could have survived a halberd and judgment. So basically I would have needed to kill the warlock almost instantaneously and then get enough distance where I can't get meleeed from the cleric, which is what I was trying to do. Unfortunately, that run ends there. But look, thank you all. I appreciate you all for spectating this journey. And seriously, this was one of the strangest permadeaths I've ever really done. It's been a few days since I've been playing as I've been building the trailer and renovating it. And then jumping into this game lately feels a lot different. Like Goblin Caves feels a lot different, place I spent a lot of time and where these permadeaths all get started. And then really I love going for PvP, so just feels like I need to find a place to start these off in a more consistent, fun way. It was really cool seeing Golem and looting a Royal Coffin, so I appreciated that part of it. And once again, I wish you guys all the best, and I'll see you in the next video.